Christy J with Stitchin Heaven, and we are doing Schoolhouse Dash, so we're excited that you're joining us. Today we're going to actually do the Snail's Trail, which is one of my favorites because it's actually easy peasy to piece, a lot easier than you probably would think if you just looked at it, but it gives kind of a circular kind of view or circular motion to the block, which is really fun. And the snail trail is actually right here, and then on the bottom are there two snail trails. So, and they're just really kind of frame the quilt, which is good. So make sure that you post your homework because we love seeing your blocks, and we're giving away Island Batik fabrics every week. So we do a random drawing every week. So make sure you post your blocks. Love seeing them. And just hit the little bell on the bottom of this video. And that way you will be informed when we post another video. So y'all have a good week, and here's Mitzi.
Okay, so it's time for Snail's Trail. Now this is a really fun block to do. You're going to want to make sure you take your time getting your cutting done, making sure those triangles are really nice and sharp, and you're going to make that swirl the way around. Now you've got two blocks of Snail's Trails. We're going to be right up here on top, and then there's one way down here on the bottom as well. But you're going to start off and get them on the point when it goes into your quilt. So we're going to start with the center and just work our way consistently out to make that really cute little snail's trail. So hang tight, we'll get you started on that one. Okay, ready to make that snail's tail? Now I'm going ahead and laid out my fabrics with that. We're using the Island Batik's parchment and the white. And really pay attention to your layout. And this is where having like the Martelli board or place to lay it out really comes to benefit for you, because I can get everything prepped in position, and then that way as I start sewing it together, it's easy to come back and retrofit those pieces in to make sure it's continuing to stay well. So the first thing I've done is I've gone ahead and laid everything out, and with it itself I've got my parchment, my white, and then your parchment follows that trail out. So think of on that snail how it's kind of woven around, and it's the same idea with this. Your parchments are going to follow the parchments, the whites are going to follow the whites out. So you're going to want to keep your iron close by because we're definitely going to be doing a lot of pressing as we go through this. So the first steps I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white and my parchment squares, and we're going to put those together. So I'm just going to put one white on top of one parchment and send it very quickly through. Short and small pieces, doesn't take long at all. Do another one. So I'm putting the parchment on the white. And again, sending it through. Now I'm gonna, in my mind, I'm gonna think of this when we talk about pressing towards the dark. I'm gonna press towards my parchment is what I'm gonna press towards, because between the two colors it is the darkest. And so I'm just gonna give it a quick little press, because then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put these four little blocks. This is your center of that snail's tail. I'm just gonna get some heat on that to make sure it's nice and flat. Just lay that over, okay? Now because I went, of course, to the parchment being the darker, when I put these two together to nest them, they nest up really nicely on my seams. So it's gonna give a nice square right there in the center. I'm gonna go ahead and put one pin in there. I just wanna make sure everything is aligned, nice and clean. We're in. All right, and then go ahead and put those two blocks together, or those two sections of blocks, four pieces total. Okay. And now when I press this, it really doesn't matter which direction I go to, because I've got the parchment and white on each side, so just whichever direction you want to go is fine. Go and give that a little heat there. And some heat. Just give it a really good press. And that puts together the center of our snails. Now I want to make sure I am lining this up correctly, because what I want to make sure is that this color, my parchment color, is going to go ahead and feed out. So here's where I'm going to line it up so my parchment feeds out. So the next thing I'm going to do actually is to put on the parchment, the smaller parchment pieces. Now when you line it up, and this is where it kind of gets a little tricky, so you want to pay close attention to it. And a pin may definitely come in handy for you on this one. And so I've got one close by also. What I'm trying to do is make sure my point is lining up in that center. And it's gonna actually leave like about 1/4 inch of your outside points hanging over the side. Let me pin this and I'll show you what I mean. Okay. So what I'm looking for is my point as it's coming down, is it with one of those center lines? And then I've also got just right at about 1/4 of an inch on my points on the outside. And this is going to be consistent on how we do it the whole way around for the snail's tail. So I'm going to go ahead and add my parchment on. And this is the smaller one, or the smallest piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the next side, and it's going to go directly opposite of that one. So we're going to do the exact same thing we just did. And if you'd feel better with pressing that one piece out you just did, that's perfectly fine to get it out of your way to help line you up. That works out perfectly fine as well. And I'm going to go ahead and feed that through. Let's get that seam line in. Make sure everything is lined up nicely. There we go. And here's where we're going to start bringing in and making those presses. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just going to go ahead and give a press onto my parchment. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure those spots are out. Now you can see I've got my points here, and on that I can go ahead and trim them, or I'm going to leave them. It really doesn't matter, because the way we lay this out, it's going to go ahead and kind of get buried. So it's really up to you as far as which way you want to go. But I'm going to go ahead and take my white, and I'm actually doing the exact same thing with my white that I just did with my parchment. Exact same lining up, everything is all consistent. Of course, this is going on the sides that we haven't already put the parchment on. So I'm just going to make sure I'm lined up really nicely. Again, if you want to go ahead and pin this, feel free. If you don't, that's fine too. And I'm going to show you in a minute why I didn't trim those dog ears just yet. So I want to help make sure everything is lining up nicely. This also plays a very important role in making sure when you're doing your cutting, because you're cutting these, you're making your squares and you're cutting them in half, to make sure that you're getting really nice consistent cuts, because it certainly does help to make sure that everything is lining up well. Okay. Now it almost looks like an envelope as we're coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and press with my white open. Okay. Get the heat on that. Let's go to the other side. All right. Now here's when I'm going to go ahead and cut those. So you see my little double dog ears all the way around. I'm going to go and trim those off now, because otherwise what's going to happen is on my next layer out, I could end up with those showing through. So I'm going to go ahead and trim them now. You can always trim them, one by one as you go. That's perfectly fine too. I just always trim them off when they get consistent. Okay, so now I've got the center section started with, I've got my square pieces and I've got my first set of those triangles. So I've got lined back up, and again, we want to make sure our colors are consistently rotating. So next up, I'm going to go back with the parchment that I would say is the medium-sized ones. So I'm doing the exact same thing really over and over and over again. It's just a repeat process. You're just laying that triangle on there. If you want to go ahead and put a pin in it, feel free to put a pin in it just to hold you and make sure you're consistent. You're looking for about that little bit of 1/4 inch hanging over on your triangle tips. And again, it's just kind of a repeat process. So I'm going to go ahead and do the parchment again. And that's going to get the first one on, and then opposite of that, we'll do the second. And again, I'm not going to trim those triangles off, those extra points, the little dog ears, you could say, off until I've gone ahead and put the parchment and the white on for that one section. So the ones that are consistently the same size. Just want to make sure I'm lined up well. Okay. Move the board out of the way a little bit. I want to go ahead and press these. And get just a little bit of heat in here. And make sure they are laying back really nicely on those seams. That's going to help give you those really crisp points also. And these two fabrics by Island Boutique make a beautiful combination when they go together. It really helps to soften up against those really bright blues. Okay, next I'm going to take my medium and my whites. Again, it's the same thing over and over and over. It's just a matter of getting larger and larger and larger in your sizes. Just make sure we're staying lined up. Feel free to put a pin in there if you're more comfortable with it. It won't hurt anything to do that. Okay, there's one white. We're going to do the next one. And then after this one's complete, all we have is our largest triangles to put in. And then you're going to have a full snail. All right, let me go ahead and set that one in. So, let me realign that. It slipped a little bit on me. That's one benefit of putting the pin in it sometimes, is that it won't slip on you, but I want to make sure if it did, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Yep, looks good. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and press the white next. We want to make sure that white gets laid back where it's supposed to be at. I'm going to put a little bit of steam in that just to help it lay down really nice. And we're getting bigger and bigger as we go. The block is definitely growing. Starting off from the little bitty center and working our way out. Now that I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and trim off those little ears. Don't need to keep them on. And I'm just trimming straight down the side of my fabric. I'm not taking any of my fabric off. I'm just taking the little ears off. Okay. And now we're ready to go with the largest size of those triangles. So once again, I'm just going to lay it in here. And the reason I keep coming back and forth to it is I just want to make sure that I'm keeping my consistent movement. So where the whites are coming out, where the parchment's coming out, I want to make sure I'm good there. So I'm going to go ahead and do parchments. I started with parchments. I'll finish with parchments as the first one of each as the sections grow larger. I'm going to just line that up. Again, if you're more comfortable putting a pin in it, certainly do it. This one is a bigger piece. I'm going to go ahead and slide one in there. Just help hold it there in the center as we're feeding through. Back under the foot we go. As I get to my pin, I'm going to go ahead and slide it out of the way, or I'll slow my machine down also as I'm going over those center spots to make sure I'm lined all the way down, because we want to make sure we're getting a really nice, clean, consistent 1/4 inch seam the whole way. Okay, one more parchment to go. So again, it's pretty easy to do. You just want to make sure that your cuts are very consistent. And they're fitting well, making sure you're lining everything up, getting to those center points, so that way you get a really nice swirl all the way around with those fabrics. It's another one of those blocks that looks a lot harder than it is. It's just a matter of consistency to get you there. Okay, take my pin out of the way. Go. Make sure everything's lined up. Okay, set that out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and press my parchment in the correct direction. So I'm always pressing outward on these because you're coming in with so much seams towards the inside. It's just easier to go ahead and give it a good press towards the outside. Okay. And I am on the last two pieces. All we've got left is our white. So let's go ahead and line those up. Quick and easy to do again. Same way as I did every other single piece of those triangles as they're coming in. I'm just going to go ahead and throw a pin right there in the center just to help hold it down in place. Let's get that fed through. And slow down to go break with my machine just to make sure I'm lined up really nicely. So as I finish that off, I've got really clean points. Take my last white triangle. This is the largest size because you're working from smallest to largest as you're building out. Just lay that nicely in place. All right. And we're going through, here we go. Take my pen out of the way. And white is in. I'm gonna cut my threads. Last thing I gotta do is press this open so we can see the full block. And I'm going to go ahead and trim off those little dog-eared pieces also. We do not need to leave those on. A little heat. Now you're going to make a total of 2 of these blocks also. You have one on the top, one on the bottom. And your snail's trail is done. I'm just going to trim these little corners off. There's no need to leave all the dog ears in there. It's just gonna add extra bulk when it comes down to it when you're starting to put your rows together. So those can all be gone. And there you go. You have your Snail's trail. Again, you've got 2 of these to make. So I've got my extra fabric ready to make the next one. And again, you're gonna put those, one will go on top, one's gonna go on your bottom of your rows, but there you go. Nice and easy, just keep your consistency on. Make sure you're lining up so that everything meets in that center point and you'll be good to go. We'll see you soon.